The SA Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee will recommend to government that stadiums host vaccinated fans at half their capacities from next month. While implementing changes to COVID-19 regulations, government increased gathering numbers to 1,000 for indoors and 2,000 for outdoors. However, sporting codes have argued that having 2,000 spectators inside stadiums does not make financial sense, as it does not allow teams to cover the costs of hosting a crowd. Sascoc will present a case for venues to be allowed to host significantly increased numbers. For more on this, we're joined by Sascoc President Hendricks. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. You've argued very strongly that there is a need to increase the number of people watching games and matches. Let's talk about some of the efforts you're making to ensure that government is listening.
Well, first of all, we work with our own national federations, the footballs, the crickets, the rugbies, and their call is to open up the stadiums to more spectators. We, as Sascoc, therefore have a task team where we sit down with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and one of our board members sits on that particular task team, and together they make recommendations to the bigger government institutions and committees around the issue of COVID.
So when it comes to some of the numbers, I mean, you're saying that having 2,000 spectators inside stadiums doesn't make financial sense, as it doesn't allow the costs to be covered. What are you actually calling for? What number would allow those costs to be covered?
The recommendation from our members is to look at a figure of 50% in stadiums, only for participants who are vaccinated.
And through that process, how do you imagine it to run? Will someone be manning the gates, or what sort of process do you see happening here as people get the tickets and then go into the stadiums to ensure that indeed the people who are watching these games are vaccinated?
Yes, so there's a variety of protocols that one needs to put in place to ensure that the environment is as safe as possible, from the screening of temperature to the screening of the vaccination certificates, to the placement of protocol officers around the stadiums, as well as the marshals that will ensure that the COVID protocols are in place and ensure that the protocols are adhered to.
Let's talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the sports sector. How severe has it been to the players, to the fans, and of course to the bank balance of the industry?
It has been devastating. If one simply looks at the interest shown in the current South Africa-India cricket tour, and you look at the stadiums currently now in Cape Town, empty, and that could have been filled up with spectators, 50%. But also the impact on the peripheral industries, the vendors, the marshals, all of them who in the past relied on income from these sporting events. So the impact has been negative and devastatingly so.
And as you push for government to listen and essentially allow you this opening, what are some of the strong arguments that you'll be putting forward to ensure that indeed you do see an increased number of supporters and those supporters being fully vaccinated?
Well, we look at the AFCON Cup of Nations that's currently taking place. We see the stadiums, we notice the protocols that have been followed and put in place there. We know that our national federations are responsible enough and competent enough, and we've run World Cup tournaments to ensure that the systems are put in place. We are currently working and liaising with professionals in the field of virology, and we're in constant contact with their advice. So all of their recommendations will be put in place, and this is the line that those national federations, the rugby, the crickets, the footballs, are pushing. They will ensure that the environment is safe. We now need to work with government and with the minister to try and encourage them to open up and change the regulations.
Barry, what do you imagine to be some of the big challenges you face ahead of this being granted?
The challenges are to convince government and to convince the change in legislation. but then to also make sure that when we sit down with those various committees, that we show them the systems that are going to be put in place so that we can ensure that safety is ensured at the stadiums. And it's not only stadiums. One is looking at venues, indoor venues as well, where we ensure that social distancing takes place, that the vaccination certificates are shown, and that masks are worn, and that sport and spectators can enjoy the spectacles.
Which are some of the venues that you've earmarked that you believe will be met with some confidence that social distancing will be maintained?
Most of the federations are competent enough to run big events. So we're looking at the major stadiums being open to 50% spectators. But as I said, even with sports such as canoeing, archery, karate, they are all calling for venues to be increased, venue numbers for spectators to be increased, so that they can also then ensure that their sport grows again after this COVID pandemic has hit them so hard.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time and weighing in on the discussion. That was Sascoc President Barry Hendricks speaking there as the call is being made for government to allow a larger capacity of people attending the matches and games at stadiums.